Life is busy, and if you do not learn how to control it, it will pass you by. There's a quote from Meredith Willson. She said, "If you wait for too many tomorrows, you will find you have nothing but a lot of empty yesterdays." That's how most people's life is, because they don't learn how to use their morning hours. If you do not learn how to use your morning hours before 8 a.m., you have a lot of empty yesterdays. Because for most people, when it gets to 8 a.m. and beyond, life gets busy. It could be getting to work. It could be taking the kids to school. It could be a number of things. Email takes over. And so what you do before 8 a.m. in large part determines your success in life. What happens before 8 a.m. is based on what you did the night before. After 8 p.m. at night, you should shut down, turn off your phone, put on airplane mode, plan your big three for the next morning. According to Brian Tracy in the book Eat the Frog, you want to eat the frog in the morning. Do the worst first. And what eat the frog actually means is that you take your most important activity, what's important, not urgent, and you get it done in the morning before the busyness of the day. Before 8 a.m., you should not take your phone off airplane mode. You shouldn't input and distract yourself. Instead, you want to get in your journal, write about what you're grateful for, think about your future self, think about what you want to accomplish that day, and then get to action on your frogs, which is your future self, which is you taking action on the most important things. And if you consistently eat the frog before 8 a.m., if you consistently accomplish 1 to 3 major outcomes towards your future self before 8 a.m., your life will change. Your life will completely change. So what you do before 8 a.m. shapes and determines the rest of your day. If you accomplish what's important before what's urgent, then eventually you'll stop paying much attention to what's urgent. Most people, their whole life is based on what's urgent. They're just reactive to situations. They're reactive to their job. And so they have dreams. They've got goals, but they can never get forward because they're just on the hamster wheel. There's actually a concept in psychology called the hedonic treadmill. And what the hedonic treadmill means is you're always chasing the next best thing. And it's like you're running, but you're always just staying at the same place. And that's how most people's lives are. They're very busy, but they're not productive. In order to be productive, you've got to let go of what's busy. You've got to let go of what's urgent. You've got to focus exclusively on what's important. Of course, you've got to pay the bills. Of course, you've got to do what's urgent. But you purposefully procrastinate those things. You push those things off because you know they'll get done. It's a forcing function. Anything that must get done will get done. Necessity is the mother of invention. But the things that aren't getting done are the things that are important, the things that are towards your future self, the dreams that you have that you're probably not doing. So when it comes to having an optimal morning routine, first off, obviously, that starts the night before. Turn your airplane mode off by 8 p.m., depending on when you go to bed. Give yourself at least 30 to 90 minutes, no phone before bed. In your journal, write about what you're grateful for. Write your big three for the next day. Have no more than 3 key objectives for the next day. As Jim Collins said, if you've got more than 3 priorities, you've got none. The 80-20 rule says that 80% of your results comes from 20% of what you do. So you don't want 10 items on your to-do list, because 8 of those, 7 or 8 of those are just busyness distraction. Focus on the 1, 2, or 3 that are going to make the biggest impact. Get to bed, get at least 7 hours of sleep. If you write the things you're grateful for at night, so if you turn your phone on airplane mode and don't look at it, if you just zone down, if you write about what you're grateful for, and if you write your big 3 at night, and then just enjoy your family or enjoy some hobby, you will sleep amazingly well. Wake up with a purpose. When your alarm goes off, or when you just wake up, you'll know the first thing you want to do because you've already got that plan in place. Never start a day unless it's finished on paper. I think Jim Rohn said that. And so when your alarm goes off or whenever you wake up, you know the first thing you want to do because you've got your big 3 written down. Therefore, you can wake up with a purpose and you can start taking action. One of the reasons that people hit the snooze button, first off, because they got crappy sleep. Second off, because they don't know the first thing they want to do. They're avoiding the day. In motivation, there's a couple forms of motivation, but one is push and one is pull. If you have to push yourself to get out of bed, that's a willpower way of living. And you don't want to live your life on a willpower approach because willpower burns out fast. You want to be pulled, which means you're intrinsically motivated and you're excited about what you're doing. You want to be pulled out of bed. You want to be super excited towards working on your future self, towards eating those frogs in the morning. And so if you've got those 3 things written down, and then you can just wake up and start taking action. Then you can wake up with a purpose. You already know what you're going to do. One of the things that Michael Jordan said is, once I made a decision, I never thought about it again. The opposite of making a decision is what's called decision fatigue in psychology. Decision fatigue means you don't necessarily know what you want to do. And so if you haven't made a plan the night before, if you haven't, that's why it says never start your day unless it's finished on paper. If your day's not finished on paper and if you don't know what you want to do, Then you've got to like weigh in your mind options. Well, what should I do? Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do this? That's decision fatigue. Going back and forth in your mind, that burns out your willpower, exhausts you, and ultimately, think about it. If your alarm goes off and then you don't know what you want to do, you haven't made the plan, you haven't finished your day on paper, and then you're sitting there exhausted in bed and you're weighing back and forth, what should I do? That's first off a really terrible situation to put yourself in. That's a horrible situation and a horrible state of mind to make a decision. You're probably not going to make a good decision in that state. And you're going to go back and forth. What should I do? Should I get up and work on that book, or should I work on that project? Or should I just lay here in bed and just hit the snooze button and get an extra 15 minutes of sleep? Situations beat undecided people. That's a bad situation to try to make a decision in. Willpower is going to fail you 9 times out of 10. That's why you want to have made the decision the night before, so that when you wake up, the decision's already made. You don't have to deal with decision fatigue. Again, the opposite of decision fatigue is decision. And so in order to eliminate decision fatigue and in order to stop relying on willpower, you just make a decision. And you can also design your environment to make it easy. One of the ways to design your environment, put your alarm clock on the opposite side of the room so that when it goes off, you've got to go get it. And right there, when you get up out of bed to turn off your alarm clock, your journal is sitting right there with your big 3. And also you got a huge cup of water sitting right there so you can drink it and hydrate. You've designed the situation so that success is inevitable. That's what you want to do, is you want to make success go from unlikely to likely to inevitable. And success becomes inevitable when you design the situation so that success is the automatic response. You've made a decision and you've designed the environment around that decision so that it's like Michael Jordan. Once you make a decision, you never have to think about it again. Another cool concept around this is from B.J. Fogg, the Stanford psychologist who wrote the book Tiny Habits. He says design beats willpower. When it comes to designing behavior and designing outcomes, you want to design the environment around the behaviors that you want. You want to design the situation so that flow is easy, so that the most easy and obvious behaviors are the ones you want to make. Most people, the most easy and obvious behaviors are the ones they don't want. They've got all their distractions on their phone, all their apps. And so the most easy behaviors are the self-sabotage behaviors. You want to do the opposite with your environment. You want to design your environment so that the most easy, obvious behaviors are the ones towards your future self. So you've slept around 8 hours. You wake up with a purpose with your big 3. You've designed your environment so it's easy. You then start your day with gratitude, because gratitude unleashes all sorts of positive emotions. It helps you see the world from a positive place. It releases endorphins, makes you happy. Then you write down for 5 to 15 minutes about your future self. This is just dumping out whatever your brain was working on while you were asleep. As Thomas Edison said, never go to bed without a request to your subconscious. Well, the night before, when you were writing about gratitude and when you were writing about your big 3, that was you making a request to your subconscious. Your brain was focusing on it, processing it. And then when you wake up, you just journal 5 to 15 minutes about your future self, about what you're trying to accomplish, and watch. You're going to get so much creative inspiration. Keep your phone on airplane mode until you've done your morning routine and until you've finished at least 60 to 90 minutes of your most important work, which is eating the frog. Don't tap into your phone, unless you're listening to like an audiobook or something that's active learning. And by the way, there's 2 forms of learning. There's approach-focused learning, which is where you're actively learning something specific that's helping you to accomplish a near-term goal, or there's avoid learning, where you're just learning, getting information. You could hop on YouTube and get information about a million topics that are irrelevant to you, to the current situation. Approach-focused learning means you are approaching and focusing on the things that you can immediately apply. And so you wake up, you do your morning journaling, and then you jump into your first frog, whatever that is. 60 to 90 minutes of focused work on whatever it may be. The most important thing you can do. Always put the important before the urgent. If you put the important before the urgent consistently, you will live a better and better life. And if you do all this before 8 a.m., you will increasingly have better days. You'll wake up energized, excited. You can accomplish more by 8 a.m. than most people accomplish in weeks or years that is relevant to your future self, because most people, they've got a lot of empty yesterdays. They wake up and then they're just on the treadmill. And they're taking a lot of action, but they're busy, not productive. But if you wake up, get yourself into a peak state, which is where you're operating at a high level, you're in a flow state, and then you do your frog in a peak state, whatever that is. For me, for years, that was writing blog posts. I would wake up, I'd write in my journal, I'd go into the gym, I'd hit it hard, and then I'd go and write an article for like 60 to 90 minutes and publish it. Did that for 3 years, and it led me to becoming a professional writer and having a 7-figure business as a graduate student. Right now, I'm working on great things towards my future self, and so you want to eat those frogs in the morning. You want to get yourself into a peak state, and then from there, the rest of the day really doesn't matter because you've already put the important before the urgent. Then you can deal with the urgent stuff, and then you do it the same thing the next night. You turn off at 8 p.m. or whatever time you want, 60 to 90 minutes before you go to bed. Put your phone in airplane mode, slow things down, be present in your environment, write what you're grateful for, write your big 3 for the next day. If you got an accountability partner, which I recommend you do, you text your accountability partner the big 3 that you're going to do the next day. Then you just enjoy yourself and go to bed and get some absolutely amazing sleep and do it the next day in whatever form you want. Another thing that obviously would be great in your morning routines if you want, although there's research that shows that fitness in the afternoon is often more effective, but do your fitness whenever you want to. Exercise first thing in the morning can be really powerful. High intensity exercise really gets your endorphins going and stuff, and there's a lot of research that shows that, like, for example, students who do like 20 minutes of high intensity exercise right before taking a test, they often do better because their brains are just operating really high. So sometimes doing high intensity workout right before you jump into your 60 to 90 minutes is good, or you just jump into your 60 to 90 minutes and exercise after, or you exercise in the afternoon. But definitely have exercise in your day, and definitely take at least 60 minutes sometime in your day to just learn something. That's active approach focused learning, not avoid learning. It's easy to be caught in the trap of feeling like you're being productive because you're learning something, whether that's on YouTube or whether that's on a book or a podcast, when it's not learning you're actively applying. Approach focused learning means you're actually learning the thing you need to do right now to take the next step action. You're actually learning stuff that's relevant to what your current and near-term goals are. You want to be an active learner, not an avoid learner. And so that is a morning routine that if you apply on a consistent basis, you will actively become your future self. Right now, this is your current baseline, your current level, your current average, your current normal. You have a normal level of baseline, an average set of behaviors and outcomes and experiences, and your future self is way up here. And if on a regular basis, every morning, you're taking action towards your future self, then you're slowly progressing your baseline up, and you're creating a new normal all the time. And that's how the compound effect happens. That's how the tortoise beats the hare, is because every single day you're taking huge action towards your future self. And you do that for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. The compound effect's nuts. It's not hard to become a millionaire. It's not hard to start businesses or become amazing at what you do if you just consistently do this. Then it just changes your orientation towards time. Because you're putting the important before the urgent, you stop dealing with the urgencies. You stop being caught up in the busyness of low level activities, and you only focus on those things which are truly important. You can say no to a lot of things, even great things, because you get increasingly clear and discerning on what matters to you. So that's my challenge to you. After 8 p.m. or between 60 and 90 minutes before bed, turn off your phone, airplane mode it, just zone in, be present in your environment. At some point, write 3 things you're grateful for, write your next big 3. Text those big 3 to an accountability partner in bullet points. It should take less than 60 seconds. Wake up with a purpose. Design the environment so that it's easy. Then from there, write in your journal for 5 to 15 minutes. Start with gratitude, and then just write whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. Your brain and your subconscious will be on fire. And then if you want, do 15 to 20 minutes of high intensity fitness and get into your frogs. 60 to 90 minutes of flow-based work on your most important goal or objective. If you trying to start a business, if you're designing a product, if you're writing an article, if you're filming videos, if you're writing books, do that. Put the important before the urgent, and then you will have actually lived your life. If you're not putting the important before the urgent, you're not living your life, you're on the hamster wheel. And it's exhausting, and it burns you out because you're spending more and more energy staying in the same place. You have a baseline right here. Your future self is up here. Every day you take action towards your future self, you're just upgrading that baseline. You're upgrading your standards for yourself. You're upgrading the person you are. The most successful and the most creative people in the world actually work less than the average person. That may be a bold claim, but in order to actually make more money and accomplish more, you have to work less, but you have to work better. Now, there are ways to do this, and your brain is literally designed to do it, and your body is designed to do it, and you can optimize your time, but you need to learn the principles. So in this video, I'm going to share with you a morning routine, but also just a lifestyle approach that can save you at least 20 hours a week. If you apply this morning routine and this exercise, not only will you get way more focused flow work done, you'll be able to, if you wanted to, become a millionaire in the next few years. You could become a professional writer. You could start a very successful business, but you could also work way less than you used to. You can work way less than the average person. I actually applied this morning routine while I was doing a PhD program to become a professional writer. I applied this morning routine for 3 years. I wrote hundreds of blog posts. They were read over 100 million times. I became a professional author. And since then, I've been able to write multiple books while doing a PhD program and while being a foster parent of 3 kids and ultimately adopting those 3 kids. I now have 6 kids as a 32-year-old millennial And I work way less than the average person because of this morning routine. And so I'm going to share my screen. I've written this as an article. This article has been read over 10 million times. I'm going to break down the science and the specifics for you, because once you understand how this works, not only will you have way more flow in your life, not only will you be able to accomplish way more, you're going to have way more focused work, but you're also going to have way more play, way more time outside of work, way more recovery. This is where the science of high performance has gone. A lot of it's focused on recovery. If you think about people like LeBron James, basketball players, it's all focused on recovery and super focused flow-based workouts. They call it deliberate practice in psychology. Deliberate practice is how you become an expert at something. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. So this article, again, is called "This Morning Routine Will Save You 20 Plus Hours a Week." And by the way, I start this article by explaining that the traditional 9-to-5 workday is poorly structured. The reason the 9-to-5 workday was established is because back in like the Industrial Revolution, the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s, that's when America became revolutionized. And that's when we developed the industrial model for work. That's what the public education system is based on. That's what the old work model was based on, where everyone worked in a factory. You went through public education system to become a factory worker, an obedient, compliant factory worker, and all of your work was mostly physical menial labor, where you're putting parts in places here. Well, we don't live in that world anymore. We've went from the Industrial Revolution to the information and the technology revolution. We now live in a global technology and information world where most people now are beginning to work from home, especially due to the pandemic. This is even more true now. You can work from home, you control your own schedule, and ultimately it's not based on how many hours you work, it's based on the results you produce. If you can produce the results, whatever it is that you need to do, in 3 hours, then why do you need to work between 9 and 5? The goal is not to work. Actually, Dan Sullivan, the founder of Strategic Coach, calls this two economies. There's two economies in the world. One is the results economy, where you get paid for the results you produce. And the other is the time and effort economy, where you're paid for the amount of time and effort you put into something. You're much better to be in the results economy, where you create results in the most effective way possible. And so that's what this morning routine is about. And I submit that if you apply these principles, you can produce results 10 times faster and 10 times better than you used to. Because most people who work in the time and effort economy, where they're working long hours, first off, they're required to take more and more stimulants every single day because, and there's a lot of research on this as well, caffeine addiction is based on the 9-to-5 work model. It's not effective to work that many hours, especially when we're using our brain so much now. The brain is an organ that takes up 20% of the body's energy, even though it only weighs like 2-3 pounds. Mental work is more taxing than physical work. And if you're doing hard mental labor, hard mental work, complex decision-making, it's exhausting. If you're in a flow state and if you're working at the most ideal time, when your brain is most suited, when you have the most willpower, when you have the most energy, and if you're in a flow state, meaning you're not distracted, you should be able to work for between 2 and 5 hours pretty straight. You could take a few mental breaks, go for a walk, do some jumping jacks, drink some water, but you could be able to work for 2 to 5 hours straight in flow without any distractions. Don't check Facebook, don't check your email. When you're taking those 2 to 5 minute breaks, go for a walk. Do something that's not plugging yourself into the matrix, where then you move your brain into a million different directions. The key to being in flow is to focus on one thing at a time, one outcome at a time. So if you're working on, let's just say, writing an article or doing a project, that's the only outcome you're trying to produce. You may take some breaks from it for a second, but you're not opening up your email. You're not sending your brain in different directions, because the more directions your brain's going, the less flow you can be in. So here it is. Really, it comes down to this. So this is the myth of the 8-hour workday. A lot of the countries in the world, they don't actually work 8 hours a day. For example, Luxembourg, these people work 30 hours per week, 6 hours per day, sometimes 5 hours. But they make more money on average than those working longer hours. So really the goal is quality over quantity. The goal is that you actually spend your time doing what you were supposed to do. That requires that you actually have clear goals and you spend time doing what Brian Tracy calls eating the frog. Eating the frog means you do the worst first. Stephen Covey called this putting first things first, putting the important before the urgent. So if you wake up with clear goals, you're clear on your future self, you're clear on what you're trying to accomplish, whether that's, again, do that project, do that thing the boss gave you, write that book, write that article, start that business, whatever it is, design that product. If you wake up with a clear intention and you've got a good plan for your day, and you wake up having gotten a great amount of rest, at least 7 hours of high quality sleep, And again, sleep is a key aspect. All forms of recovery are a key aspect, so that when you're working, you're actually there. You're focused, you're in flow, you've set the stage, you've set the table. Then you just get to work. Get to work, and do it before. Knock out your key tasks before you look at your phone, before you send your brain into a million different directions. Most people, they wake up and within the first 6 to 8 minutes of their day, they've already opened up their email, they've opened up their social media, they've already sent their brain into 1,000 different directions, they've sped their brain from what's called the alpha state to the beta state, and so as a result, they can't focus. And then they're just distracted and non-focused throughout the whole day. And they're basically like a person walking through a casino. They're ping-ponged on all of the different distractions, and they're never in flow, they never create important work, they never do what Cal Newport calls deep work. And they don't experience flow at home or at work. They're never really with their family. They're never really recovering. They're always a little stressed. They're always feeling like a fraud, always regretful. You can only have confidence, or what psychologists call identity capital, what Stephen Covey calls having a personal bank account, which is basically confidence and integrity and character, by doing what you want to do and what you need to do, putting first things first. For example, I know on all the days when I wake up and I just distract myself on social media or something, that I feel like a failure when I go home to my kids. I feel like I wasted mine and their time. And I know I set both of us up for a less of a future. But when I go to work and I focus on first things first, I knock out my goals, then I can go home and just completely turn off. You can go on and off only if you accomplish what you were supposed to. And what you were supposed to do is fewer things. 80-20 principle says that 80% of your results come from 20% of what you do. This again is why you can save at least 20 hours per week, because you're probably doing 80% of the things that are costing you all your time and effort. 80% of what you're doing is only producing 20% of your results. So what would happen if you just removed that 80% and either delegated it, outsourced it, or removed it from your life and only focused on the few things that produce the big results? Again, you're either in the results economy or you're in the time and effort economy. So the key here is this. Wake up with a plan. Go to bed with a plan, which the night before, maybe you spent 3 to 5 minutes making the plan so that you could actually wake up with a purpose. Wake up. And again, James Clear does this. James Clear wrote the book Atomic Habits. He does not look at his phone until noon. Very smart. Very smart. No. And really, you want to use your phone technology, which is basically other people's agendas. You want to use that as a tool. You don't want that tool to drive you. Most people are driven by that tool. So you don't have to wait until noon, but you want to eat the frog before you look at your phone. You want to accomplish your most important work. 2 to 5 hours of focused flow, and then be done. And actually, there's a lot of research that says you want to work out. A lot of people, they work out first thing in the morning, which is cool. There's a lot of research that working out speeds up your energy and it gets you going. And that if you get high intensity workout, like for example, before taking a test, you can perform better on that test. I'm all for that. But there's also a lot of research that says that you're going to work out a lot better and get way more out of it if you do it at least like a couple hours after you've woken up. And I find that the optimal morning routine is this. Wake up, get yourself into a different environment, get yourself energized, write in your journal, write about your goals, and then ultimately take action on your frog, whatever that is. 60 to 90 minutes plus whatever you can get, at least 60 minutes in flow. But if you can get 2 to 5 hours in flow, working on your number one goal. For me, it used to be writing articles. For me, now it's writing books, making videos like this. But if you do that in a flow state where there's nothing else distracting you, you haven't already opened up social media, you're not already distracted by a million things, you're just knocking out that one thing. Then ultimately you just recover. You recover, you take breaks. There's a lot of research on this topic. It's called psychological detachment from work. Basically, the idea is you need to take breaks from work. In order to be in a flow state, in order to fully engage in your work, you need to fully disengage. As I've already said in this video, the way to fully disengage is to actually have done the work. You need to actually have focused flow and done what you said you would do what you want to do, take action and actually move your projects forward so that you're becoming your desired future self. And then ultimately, because you did that, you actually can give yourself permission to fully unplug because you're in integrity. You fully unplug and then you give the energy and attention to the other areas of your life, whether that be hobbies, recreation, family, whatever you want to do. Just recover, because by recovering, you're going to actually fully recover. But what's interesting about it as well is there's a lot of research that shows 16% of creative ideas happen while you're at work. Most creative ideas happen while you're recovering. And so because you've hit it so hard, you're going to actually, while you're asleep, for example, with fitness, you actually get stronger while you're asleep. You gain muscle while you sleep. And so by taking time away, by recovering, and then by ultimately reflecting, writing in your journal at the end of the day, 5 to 10 minutes about what you learned. At the end of the day, your brain's actually a lot more analytical. In the morning, your brain's a lot more creative. But at the end of the day, you can actually take the time to write in your journal about what you learned. You're going to get all sorts of creative insights just because you've been recovering. Then ultimately, you make the plan for the one frog you're going to eat the next morning, or whatever it is, your main task, whatever's important, first things first the next morning, so that then the next morning you can wake up with a purpose. And ultimately, that's the goal. You wake up, you work on a really good brain when your subconscious is most primed, when your willpower is most high, when your brain's most primed for creative work. You do your most important work first thing in the morning in a flow state without your brain going a million directions, and then you recover. And you become results oriented. You have very clear goals, big picture goals and short-term goals. You've got weekly goals for what you're trying to accomplish that week. You've got your daily 1 to 3 accomplishments you're trying to accomplish that day. You've got quarterly goals, and your future self is increasingly clear. If you've got clear goals, that's going to help you be in flow. If you design your life and environment really well, that's going to help you be in flow. If you recover really well, that's going to help you be in flow. If you're invested in your goals, that's going to help you be in flow. Investing in, for example, mentorship. If you have deadlines, that's going to help you be in flow. As you know, I think it's Parkinson's law that work fills the space you give it. And so if you have short timelines, you'll be able to get things done. For example, this month, I'm filming this in December of 2020. I have to almost write 2 full books this month in December because I've got deadlines, but I know that I'm going to do it because there's a deadline. And so I have to be in flow because my situation demands it. That's another aspect, is designing demanding situations. That's called a forcing function. Will Durant, the famous historian, said that the ability of the average person could be doubled if the situation demanded it. A lot of research on psychology shows that, the Pygmalion effect says that we're either rising or falling to the demands of our situation. One of the reasons why I actually learned this morning routine and had to apply it is because when I was in my PhD program, my wife and I became foster parents of 3 kids. And so as a college student, I used to have all the time in the world. And when you have all the time in the world, you're going to waste it. As the saying goes, if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person, because they actually know how to spend their time. Well, once my wife and I got foster kids, after I came home from school, I had to help my wife because she was freaking busy and crazy. It was crazy having those kids in the beginning. They were crazy in the beginning. They've really transformed. It's been amazing, and we've transformed. But I had to learn this because I wanted to become a professional writer, and I learned how to do that. I learned how to become a professional writer. I've published 3 traditional books in the last 3 years. And I've got 3 more coming out next year. And I also was able to grow a 7-figure online business before I even graduated with my PhD, all by doing this. And so I can promise you it works, whatever you're trying to accomplish. But not only that, you live your life more on purpose. You have a lot of confidence because you're experiencing way more flow. You're experiencing flow at work, which gives you confidence. You're accomplishing goals, which gives you confidence. You're also experiencing flow at home because you're giving yourself permission to recover. You give yourself full permission to recover because you accomplished your 1 major task for the day, or your 2 major tasks. Because you were in such flow and because you actually accomplished a goal, you give yourself full permission to recover, and it feels good. And then you're far more alive and alert with your family. One more thing I'll just invite you to do, because willpower is a very weak resource. Relying on willpower is dumb. B.J. Fogg, the Stanford psychologist, said you're much better to design the environment than rely on willpower. So design trumps willpower every day of the week. Part of design is actually removing bad defaults. Most people, the default is to look at their phone if it's by their body. So one of the things you want to do when you're recovering is keep your phone away from your body. That's something that I've actually made clear to my kids. One of my major goals is to keep my phone away from my body when I'm home, unless it's necessary to the situation. But if I'm sitting there staring at my phone, and there's a lot of research on this as well, if parents are addicted to their cell phones, what do they expect of their kids? Kids mimic. We all mimic. You mimic what you're looking at. So whatever you focus on expands. If you want to become a millionaire, focus on millionaires. But your kids are focusing on you. And so design the situations so that flow is easy. Leave your phone in your car. Leave it in the bathroom. Leave it in some other room. Leave it in your work bag. Leave your computer at the office. Or if you're working directly from home, leave it in the area where you work, or leave it out in your car. Design the situation so that flow is easy. Give yourself permission to psychologically detach and recover from work. Wake up with a purpose. Focus on flow. After you've crushed flow-based work, then exercise, because exercise heals your brain, it heals your body, it gives you longevity. And honestly, over time, you work less and less, but you accomplish more and more. That's the morning routine that will help save you at least 20 hours per week. You make or break your life before 8 a.m. Most people by 8 a.m., they've already looked at their cell phone and they're getting on with the busyness of their day. They're getting their breakfast made, getting their coffee, getting their kids to school, getting to work. Most people, their whole life is built around distraction and what's urgent. What's urgent is getting to work, paying the bills, taking care of all the tasks, getting to your meetings. Very few people set up their evenings and their mornings so that they can focus on what's important, not what's urgent. You've got to do what Brian Tracy would call eat that frog. First thing in the morning, get yourself into the right frame of mind. Meditate, visualize, pray, connect with your higher power, connect with your future self, and then ultimately take action. Take 60 to 90 minutes of action in a flow state before you've plugged your brain into all the technology, before you've plugged into all the notifications, before you've sped your brain up and gotten yourself totally distracted by the day. Instead, you wake up first thing in the morning before there's busyness and you've given yourself 1 to 2 hours of space where you can meditate, visualize, and ultimately take action on your dreams. Again, that's called eat that frog. Eating the frog is doing the most important thing first, doing the worst first, doing that thing that's important but not urgent, doing that thing that if you do it, it will move your life forward. So who is your future self? What are your dreams? What is it you actually want to accomplish? Are you actually waking up and giving yourself space first thing in the morning to first off meditate, pray, visualize your future self? There's a lot of research that shows that very few people visualize their future self. But what would happen if rather than at the end of the day, when your willpower is most depleted, when you're fried, when most people at the end of the day are fried because their willpower is all gone, what do? You consume junk food, you consume junk media, you do a bunch of things to create immediate dopamine or immediate gratification because you're not thinking long term. When your willpower is low, you don't think long term, and so you make short term poor decisions. And most people at the end of the day, because they're fried, they just consume a bunch of junk, which ultimately hurts their sleep, it hurts their momentum the next morning. So what would happen if you, instead of consuming a bunch of junk, unplugged fully? There's actually a lot of research on this. It's called psychological detachment, or even psychological detachment from work. But what would happen if you fully unplugged at the end of the day and just recovered? What would happen if you left your cell phone away from your body for longer periods of time so you could actually engage with the ones you loved and actually go through a true state of recovery? The human brain needs recovery, and it's actually while you're recovering that your best ideas will come. Your best experiences will happen. Research shows that only 16% of creative breakthroughs and creative ideas happen while you're focused at work. Instead, most of your best ideas, most of your biggest ahas are going to happen while you're recovering, when you're on vacation, when you're in the shower, when you're hanging out with loved ones, when you're driving. And so what if at the end of the day, or at the end of your work, you fully unplugged, you left your cell phone away from your body, and you fully connected with your loved ones, you actually decompressed, you engaged in life, and then you went through a routine of actually shutting yourself down, going to bed maybe an hour earlier, rather than consuming a bunch of junk, rather than being disconnected from your loved ones, you actually created a routine for going to bed earlier and then planning the one thing that you want to do the next morning. There's one thing that you really only need to accomplish the next morning. Far too many people have a to-do list of 10 or 15 items. The 80-20 principle shows that 80% of the things you do produce 20% of your results. So what if you removed 8 or 9 of those things on your to-do list and you did the one thing that you knew mattered more than anything towards your bigger picture dreams? What's the one thing that if you did it would help you become your future self? What's the one thing that if you did it would make your whole life different? What's that most important thing? What's the frog that you're avoiding? What's that worst first? What would happen if you went to bed a little bit earlier and rather than staring at your cell phone in bed, you actually just mapped your next morning? Research from BJ Fogg, who's a Stanford psychologist, he's one of the leading experts on habit design, said that the easiest way to do a habit is to make it easy. You want to make it the simplest thing. So if you want to floss your teeth in the morning, all you have to do is take the floss out and put it on your counter so that it's so easy as all you have to do is pick it up. That's how you set yourself up. If you want to go running in the morning, all you have to do is get your running clothes, set them right next to the door so that you don't have to do a ton of things in the morning. You want to wake up in the morning and have it all laid out, and you want to know immediately what you want to do. You want to know exactly what you want to do, that first thing when you first wake up. You want the environment set up, but you also want to know in your mind what you're going to do so that you don't have to make a decision when you first wake up. So what would happen if you went to bed a little earlier and without being so plugged into your technology? What if you had actually recovered from work, actually been engaged in your life, and you went to bed with a purpose? You went to bed knowing first thing in the morning what you would do, and you would set up the environment so that when you woke up, the decision was already made. You didn't have to burn out decision fatigue. You didn't have to burn out willpower. You didn't have to lay in bed with the alarm going off and wonder what you're going to do. Instead, you heard the alarm, you woke up, and you were excited to wake up because the environment was already set up, and you already knew the first action you were going to take, and you already knew the core outcome that you were going to try to make. You knew that you were going to eat that frog. You were going to put the important over the urgent, and you were going to, rather than plugging your brain into technology, you were going to keep your brain waves moving slow. Your brain waves move slow first thing in the morning, which means that you're most creative, you've got the most ability to visualize, you've got the most ability to create and take action. But most people, they wake up and immediately plug themselves back into their technology, which speeds their brain up to what's called the beta state, and therefore their brains are already going in too many different directions. And so as a result, they can't connect with their subconscious, they can't connect to their future self, they can't take bold action, and then they just get caught up in the urgency of the day. And then they go on a repeat cycle where day after day, month after month, year after year, they're not taking action on what's most important, and so they're not living their dreams. But if you give yourself some space, if you wake up early, you know what you're going to do, and you're focused on one core outcome. What's the one key thing? When I was a graduate student, I was getting my PhD, I really wanted to become a professional writer. And the one core outcome that I went for every morning before my 8 o'clock class was to wake up, meditate, visualize my future self, and then that one core outcome was just to write articles. And I wrote articles several mornings before going to my classes. And so by the time I went into my 8 a.m. class, my fellow graduate students were just pulling themselves out of bed, drinking their morning coffee, trying to wake themselves up. And I had already meditated, visualized, exercised, and most importantly, done my most important task, which was writing an article. And it was through doing that over a few years, while still a graduate student, my blogs were read over 100 million times. I became a professional writer. I was making more money than all of my professors combined by the time I left, because I put the worst first. I put the most important thing first. So who is your future self? And what's the most important thing you can do? What's that most important action that if you woke up and took that action first thing in the morning in a nicely visualized state, you visualized your future self, you prayed, you meditated, you got yourself into that right frame of mind. You didn't plug into technology, your brain was still moving slow. And you then focused in a flow state for 60 to 90 minutes on what's most important before the urgency of the day, before everything happened. How would that impact your relationship with your kids if you're a parent? What would happen if when you first encountered your kids, you weren't reactive to them because you were still waking up? But what if you had already visualized your future self? You'd already prayed, you'd already gotten yourself into the right frame of mind, and you'd already put in what's most important to you towards your biggest dreams first. How would that change how you interact with your kids? You would then be a lot more powerful, a lot more confident. You'd be a lot more discerning. You could actually be present with them because you had put first things first. You've got to put first things first in your life, or else everything else is going to happen to you, and you're going to be reactive to the situation. That is the key to morning routines, is knowing the one thing that's most important that you're going to do and getting that done consistently. If you woke up every morning with a purpose, and if you actually got that thing done, took 60 to 90 minutes of focused flow on that thing. If you're a writer, it's writing. If you're making videos, it's videos. If you're a scientist, it's doing science. Whatever it is, what's that important thing that's actually going to move you towards your future self? You have to know who your future self is. There's a lot of research on this. In the field of performance psychology, we call it deliberate practice. Deliberate practice is engaging in a process that helps you develop skills, abilities, expertise. And you can't engage in deliberate practice on a regular basis if you don't know who you want to be. So if you want to be someone, if you want to get somewhere, the first thing you do in the morning is got to be taking action towards that thing. That first morning, first off, your brain's moving slow. Second off, if you're taking powerful action, repetition over time changes you at a subconscious level. So if you're taking action first thing on those things, over time what's going to happen is you're going to no longer be able to justify the things you used to justify. You're going to spend your time on more and more valuable things, and you're going to start saying no to the distractions that are taking your time, the relationships that are taking your time, even the job that might be taking your time. You're going to say, I'm worth more than this. My future self is worth more than this. And then you'll increase your commitment towards what you want. Because as you engage in those future self behaviors, you're going to get very committed to who you want to be. And your whole day starts to shift if by 8 a.m. you've already taken more action towards your dreams and goals than most people take in a month or a year. And if that becomes your consistent morning routine, then over time you've got so much confidence, so much momentum that results just start coming at you. Life becomes really easy to succeed when you put the worst first, or when you put the most important first, when you begin with the end in mind, which is your future self, as Stephen Covey would say, and then as you take action consistently towards your future self, all of a sudden you become your future self. You become the person you want to be. You begin creating the circumstances you want. Most people, when they wake up, they're operating from their current circumstances. They wake up, they react to their notifications, They then go on with what's busy and what's urgent. They're living from their current circumstances, and they're also living from their former identity. They're living out the habits of their former self. But if you wake up and visualize your future self, and if you visualize your future circumstances, and if you're taking action based on the circumstances you want for your future, then you're operating from who you want to be. And there's a lot of research that shows when you're operating from your future self, and when you're actually visualizing that and feeling the emotions of that, and then acting towards that, that then you change your brain in the present so that it looks like your future self's brain. And you start to anticipate and expect success. So that's my invitation to you, is go to bed a little bit earlier. Don't plug into all of the dopamine seeking because your willpower's gone at night. Don't consume so much junk as far as media or food. Be plugged into where you are. Wherever you are, that's where you should be. Actually engage with your loved ones. Keep your cell phone away from your body as much as you can. And then recover and go to bed with a purpose. Wake up, eat that frog. Visualize your future self so that by 7 or 8 in the morning, you've already lived your dreams. Then you have so much confidence in your day. Then you change what you tolerate. Then you change what you're willing to engage in. Then you start saying no and no and no to more and more things. And you start making true commitments and decisions toward your dreams. That's how you build confidence. That's how you build momentum. That's how you live your dreams. That's how you start owning your time. And that's how you stop engaging in things that no longer matter to you. That's how you upgrade your standards. That's how you live dreams fast. That's how you can make millions of dollars. That's how you can create an amazing life. So what you do before 8 a.m. makes or breaks your life. Who's the person you want to be? Who's the person that is your future self? And what are the actions they would take? What are the things that your future self would say no to that you're still saying yes to? What are the distractions, the addictions that you're still saying yes to that your future self said no to a long time ago? What are the actions that you need to take? What is the one thing that if you did and got really good at or took action on or completed would help you become your future self? I'm Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Have an amazing day. Cheers to your future self. Please subscribe. Links down below is a course to my 30-day Future Self program. I hope you have an amazing day. Talk to you soon.